Hey everybody, it's actually called Peregrine CMS. That's a bird. It's the fastest bird in the world when it tries to get its prey. And we were trying to build a very quick CMS on top of Sling. It's a head optional CMS. I guess that's the new term for something like that. And of course, it's built on the Apache Sling. My name is Ruben Reusser. I work for a company called Headwire. And let's dive into it. So what is Peregrine CMS? It's a head optional CMS, as I said. It's based on Apache Sling, and I'm using this link here. Can you still hear me? Yeah. It uses Vue.js and its friends for the administration interface, and it uses client-side rendering, and it also supports server-side rendering. So client-side rendering is when we decide to basically ship just a JSON file to the client side and then have the browser do the rendering of the page of the HTML. This is the whole SPA progressive web app approach. And of course, we can also do server-side rendering, as Sling supports that as well, if you want to do that still. And the administration is, at this point, only supported in modern browsers, so IE 11, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, stuff like that, right? You can build a website that supports anything, as you can do with Sling anyhow. Why Peregrine CMS? It's actually often easier to complain than to build a system yourself. So Carsten is laughing up here because I've been talking to him all week, right? And complaining. But we all work with AEM, and it's a great system, but we also like to complain about it, and sometimes I think like, oh, why did they build it like this? And so at the end we kind of said like, well, let's try to build something like this ourselves and see how we do, right? And maybe we get some appreciation of what the Sling Oak community and Adobe does for us, right? So with that, I'll dive into a quick demo, really quick. So this is our homepage of the CMS. We have assets, we have something called objects, which are structures that you can define. We have templates, I'm not going to go into that, and sites. So let's go to assets real quick. Let's say I want to source an asset from Pixabay. I already chose one of our dogs, so let's go with, where was that picture that I wanted? Let's go with this picture for now. I'll add this to the CMS. So we have stuff like we have in AEM as well. This is the picture with its properties. We can go edit properties and stuff like that. I can go out here. I can go to sites. We have a simple example site in it, kind of like it's really a basic simple site. I can go in here. I can go edit, and I need to get my adaptTo batch, right? So I do that. I hope that counts. I can drag and drop components. Let's take the image component, for example, over here. Select the path. Oh, here's my picture that I had before. Yes, that's it. Select it. I still have to hit OK here, and boom, my content is updated, right? It's kind of similar to some system that you all know, but it just felt the right way to do it. We also have things like different views, right? So desktop, tablet, mobile, preview, things like that. We can switch between different pages, and you see it's all quite fast, right? Our focus was to make it extremely fast. So this, what you saw here, is still actual pages in the system, and they're all rendered client-side in the browser rather than rendering server-side and then pulling the HTML over and doing stuff. So that's why we actually can be that fast. We have in here, we have our model of what structure is actually currently in the browser to render all the UI that you see and the data and whatever. So easy debugging and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it for the demo. I didn't want to go too far into it. So it's basically we built it for SPA or progressive web applications. It's component-based like Sling. It has pages, templates. We call it per page versus AEM calls it CQ page, right? So we had to be different. As asset, generic objects are for lists management or for tag management. If you want to build trees and things like that, we make that pretty easy. We have an image renditioning pipeline in it. We use libvips for that because our big friend. They have their own proprietary library to scale images. We can't afford that one, right? So we chose libvips. We have basic support for Node.js in Sling, so we can actually run any server-side or any client-side code. We can also run server-side to hydrate the HTML before we send it to the customer the first time, which is it's kind of great. It works nice. We chose this because the JavaScript library, some don't like other engines. They fail and things like that. We support different modes. So in AEM, we have the classic author-publish mode. We figured this is a smaller CMS, so let's support a one-instance mode where you have your author is also the publish instance, but we also support the author-publish infrastructure. And for that, we actually have replication. In the replication, we have an in-instance replication. So instead of /content, we actually go to a /live, and then from the outside, we can go to that. We can serialize out to files. So if your website is not dynamic, then we basically just create a whole bunch of JSON files and HTML files on your system that can be consumed by any web server, and we do that for S3 as well. And of course, we use Sling distribution if we want to do author-publish deployments. We extensively use Sling models in the back, so every component that's rendered in the client side is also backed by a Sling model in the back end. And it's very easy. I think it's a very easy front-end development process. We have been focusing on making the path from an HTML into the CMS as a component extremely simple. We have a couple tools, they're all on the website. We have a little automated front-end test suite and support for multiple languages. I can show that, I forgot that. So we can actually switch. Yeah, I'm on the home page, so I can switch to German. I was already on German. So yeah, in German, not everything is translated, of course, because we need support for that. But you can switch back to English, right? So it's very quick and just get some data in the backend. All right, and Peregrine CMS couldn't exist for a lot of projects. So therefore, thanks to the community that I think has been growing ever since adaptTo was started, right? So we see way more stuff going into Sling and Oak, and we see way more other projects. So the Apache Sling team, great, thanks. Oak as well. So we also use in Sling 9, there's Composum, which is kind of like the CRX version with package manager and things like that. We make heavy use of that. WCMIO, we basically use the whole package deployment. So we have the same type of package deployment as you have in AEM, and we actually have in this as well through support from Stefan. Of course, J2V8, that's the wrapper for Node.js, Vue.js and Vue Form Generator. They help to make the UI nice. Materialize CSS, that's our CSS that we use for the administration. Vips for image renditioning, and Maven, of course, for builds. All right. So these are the links, peregrinecms.com. It's open source, Apache license. You can download, play with it. Installation is easy. If you have Node.js installed, you do npm perkly, which is our command line tool, -g, and then you can do perkly server install, and you actually have a running instance of this whole thing going. And that brings me to questions. I have 1 minute left. I was supposed to be faster.
First of all, thanks for this presentation. Which template languages are supported?
Oh, good question. So we currently, our sites that we built so far, they're built on Vue.js because of some licensing issues that React had. We also support React in the rendering stack for sites. We tried Angular. We didn't finish that one yet, or you can use HTML, Java, JSPs in the backend server. So it's agnostic of what we use. We serve a structure that should help you render that with any type of templating language. So it's a JSON structure that you have to walk through and render the page. So whatever you want to use, you can use.
Thank you. Any other question? There's one here in the very front.
My question is a little bit similar to the last one. Do you have the possibility to implement dialogues like in AEM, and which language do you use therefore?
So we have the possibility to implement dialogues. They're not like AEM because I think that's too much work. We rely on the view form generator, which is basically a schema with information, and we also rely on the same data to auto-create models and components for that, so to make the development process easier, because currently we update stuff in 50 places, and that's not my favorite. I think you want to stop, right?
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then thank you very much for your talk, Ruben. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicolas Peltier. With Chris, we are developing adaptTo website. I was here last year, basically, talking about Apache Sling pipes. I do it again. Somebody earlier said that you had to Google for it, so Google comes to you. Basically, I'm here also because I've been terrible in communication and promoting it, and I need usage for it. And this is what this talk will be about communication and language, principally. And language is something that do share two kinds of people, children and developers. And talking about children and developers, there is the Lego metaphor that has been already taken a lot during the conference, and I love those metaphors, could be taken here another time. What I would like to talk about in that slide is useless bricks. On the left, the little boy, or little child, really don't care about useless bricks. If a brick is a brick, he's happy because he can make his tower really, really big. On the right, there are, we could call them useless bricks, big things in that code you can't read, and that's on purpose, that are totally useless. Basically, a developer that comes to you like that will probably be as happy as the child on the left. And he will say something like, it's just a servlet that will search for component with that resource type and change it to that other resource type, or it's just something that retrieves me the local root page of my site. And it's funny to see that if I type what they just said, that is totally clear to me what it's doing when they explain it to me. It would be very, very shorter compared to that code. And when there is that difference of size between Java language and human language, you can probably realize that there is something wrong. To be fair with the Java language, human language works here because it's a Sling developer that talks to another Sling developer. So basically there are keywords when we talk together that we perfectly know what they are about, how they are used, how they should be chained. And this is basically the purpose of Sling pipes, which is to assemble blocks of code we love in a more efficient way. I take a few of my favorite Lego bricks, and of my favorite, it's not my favorite, I just took some of the function, if we can find a name for each, that we are using. I did a random import package occurrence search on GitHub to have an idea of the usage. That is not always a metric for quality. And yeah, so basically, how cool would it be for searching a component with a resource type and writing some other resource type to just have the little XPath brick and put it the right brick on it. With that little Lego tower, somebody that look at my Lego tower can really quickly understand what it is about. It can also say that it's totally wrong from the beginning. And basically, we can store that content. It becomes a content. It becomes a configuration. The code is executed by something I don't even want to know how it works, right? So now, a little demo, because some things have changed since the last time. So I understand that this will not work. I have to move this here. And I have also a terminal. Oops. Oh shit, yeah, I didn't realize that. Okay. So, what has changed since last year? It is Bertrand's proposal is to add a Fluent API. So I'm using here the Groovy console together with the pipes bundle and the Sling query bundle, which is a dependency. And here I was talking you earlier about having the root locale of a given website. So let's say that your website is called, sorry, it's a bit difficult for me, content.com. Here I have echo, and I can run it, and yeah, so this returns me the root page, so pretty stupid so far. Then I will add another pipe. Do you see well, by the way? Maybe I should. I will ask for children of type CQ page of that, and run the script. And I have that. And then I can just do that again. Sorry. And ooh, I have my locale with country and languages I can then use. So far it's okay. Let's say now that oh, where is it here? Okay. Now I want in my conf tree I want to have countries with name and capital, and I have that very nice external API that comes from API World Bank org. I say it's very nice. I don't find it very nice. It's an array, and the country list is the second part of it. The first part of it describes the paging. But here, for the demo, I will just do the first 50 countries. And so what I will do here, I've prepared it. So I'm using the JSON pipe, which is an input stream pipe like the CSV one, that is able to read an input stream for the repository from what you put in the expression or from a remote location. So here, I put it here, and basically it will just do nothing with the resources, but it will iterate over a JSON array items. And here, the JSON value I'm interested in is located at the second item of the root array. And I will call it JSON to reuse it later. I'm calling it mkdir here. That will basically create a resource tree in conf countries, which doesn't exist now. Yes, I will refresh. Okay, there is a test, I don't know why. This is why, okay. I promise I will remove it. And then, so this is for each item of the JSON array, there will be that, the following executed. So the conf country, I can do something special. I'm not sure, because this is ECMAScript that is executed, so I think this will work. I don't know. Maybe I will screw my demo. And then for each resource, I will add the JCR title in a capital. So let's go, right? It looks like it worked. So you have now. countries with lowercase countries, capital and title of the country. This is cool. Okay, so this is the one I just did. So for now, you see that a developer can have fun, and this is cool. But at some point, you need production execution. So I'm going to take this one, for example, and let's say that I'm happy. There are several ways of deploying your pipe. A pipe could be used for a script, as you understood. It could be used as a servlet in an application, or it could be used more for a script deployed with, as a script, it could be deployed in a separate package with Vault install hook you've seen before from Netcentric. But yeah, let's say that I want to do that, a servlet out of it. I would just do services, locals, and build, basically run does the build plus the execution. It just build it in a temporary location. Here, so it did create my pipe in that place, and now I have a nice service here that will give me what I want, right? And so I've built a servlet without any Java code. Do I have still time or no much left? Okay. Okay, so I have a lot of other stuff, but as I don't have time, I will jump to the conclusion, saying that yeah, there is a lot of unmentioned pipes, and even more because I hadn't the time to finish. And I need usage for sharing ideas and feedbacks, and I need better distribution. So I'm in discussion within Adobe to distribute it in some way. It could be also a candidate for being a content aggregator after a discussion with Bertrand yesterday. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicolas.
Maybe I don't have time for questions anyway, so yeah.
Hi again. So I'm back on stage to bother you with only 10 more minutes about what I'm doing, so more about testing. Just, if you remember from last year, I was here together with Andrei Dulvac, and we were talking about the Sling HTTP testing clients, which is a toolbox of utilities that help you create integration tests for Sling instances. So that was already added in the Sling code, in the Sling repository. It was open sourced. I hope you started to use it. And just after the presentation, we collected some feedback from some of you guys. And we realized that you actually want to use it for testing AEM, right? And the problem there is that the high-level functionalities of AEM were not covered, because this was really meant for Sling. So we listened to your feedback, and I would like now to introduce you the AEM HTTP testing clients, which are built on top of the Sling testing clients, but add more functionality for actually testing high-level things in AEM. So things like, I don't know, you could think replication, WCM activities, and so on. So yeah, the good news is that it's gonna be open sourced, and you can see the code, you can contribute to it, you can use it, you can extend it. So it's gonna be really open. Now, if you already scanned the QR code, you might have had a surprise. Because probably you've seen this. So yeah, the thing is not yet public. It's not yet uploaded on the public repository. This is just because we are finalizing the documentation and arranging the code, so it really looks nice when we gonna make it public, right? So if you can just star that repository and keep an eye on it, because it's gonna come really, really soon. So if you want to stay up to date, go on and follow this repository. It's gonna come really soon. So now, one more thing before I actually show you a small sneak peek into what's gonna be, is that besides the clients, which we actually separated in 2 layers, so there are gonna be some Granite clients and some AEM specific clients to follow the layers of the product. We will also add a set of tests, of AEM tests that you can use to validate your instances and to take them as example, as best practices for writing tests using these libraries, right? So let me now show you what it's gonna look like. Maybe this is not the final version, but it will look very close to this. So as you've seen in the slide, there will be basically 3 repositories. The first one, it's Granite specific testing tools. So you have different things there. I don't know if you can properly see it. I cannot zoom it, sorry. So there are gonna be things around offloading, testing, security, a lot of security things that you can test, topologies, I don't know, workflows, and so on, right? So this is at Granite level. Then at CQ level, the same. So adding even more on top of the Granite clients and tools. There are a lot of things. For example, this is a really useful client, the CQ client, what we call, and it has a lot of functionalities around WCM. I don't know if I can see. If you can really see this, it has a lot of methods that will help you write concise tests. Again, there are a lot of things related to workflows, more security stuff, MSM, and so on. We will open source on everything that it's in here. So now, to illustrate how a test will actually like, we don't have the samples yet selected, but this might be some example of a classical test, right? So you see, this is a test that shows how you can, in just 50 lines, you can write a replication test. And these are some rules that are gonna be in the CQ testing clients, and that can apply on your test to bring all the useful methods. So you have here something that's gonna give you a client for the author, a client for the publish, and apply more stuff like filtering, test description, and so on. This is another really useful rule, which will create a new page for every test. So at the execution of every test, you're gonna create a unique page, so you can use it in your test, and you don't have to repeat this for every test in the code. Then in this example, we are doing some more setup, just to show you how we could actually use the rules. So in our case, we need both an author and publish. And for the author, we need the admin user. For the publish, we just want the unauthenticated user. We can basically tag your tests and leverage the filtering features. So we label this as a smoke test, and for maybe create a smaller a smaller set of the tests that will be run very fast. And then the text itself is very simple. We want a replication client because we want to do some replication. So we just adaptTo. Bertrand, can I get my point? So we adapt it and we get a replication client on which we are actually, with which we're gonna activate the page that was already created before the execution of the test. So things like this, like wait for the replication queue, are very, very useful because these are asynchronous methods. So usually people tend to put slips there, which depending on the hardware might not be enough. But this is a really smart waiting mechanism. And then we actually test that on the publish, the page was activated. So just to quickly run the test, you see that, so I already started on my machine 2 authors, 2 AEMs, 1 author and 1 publish. And the test has chosen the default values for these. You can change the values by via configuration if you have them started on a different port, but it has just taken the default values. Another really, really useful thing is that this rule has also changed the configuration on author to point the replication agent to the publish. So if you had different ports, it would have adapted everything. And then just my logging showing that the page was published. So you see this unique ID, unique name. This is to have the test write a new page every time, so it doesn't rely on data from another test. So yeah, this is it. Just keep an eye on those repositories because it's gonna come soon. And of course, we are just welcoming feedback and contributions once it's out there. I hope it's gonna be useful. Thank you.
Jörg and I had a quick chat this morning, and we realized that in our consulting experience, we both saw that a lot of people don't actually make much use of having all these open source projects available and dig into that or take part in them in some way. And we believe it's a good way to learn by starting to be involved on some level. So we just thought we'd quickly give an overview of how involvement can look like. It can be very private or more public. Maybe Jörg says the next.
Yeah. Well, we first think that out there in the wider Apache community, there is a really lot of code which is of high quality. I think it's many cases it's even better, has even better quality than proprietary source code. So I think that's a really good chance to learn stuff, learn how others solve their issues, and especially when you in the AEM world, sometimes you think, okay, I know that the product has a feature, and I would like to well, it would be great if I could imitate the way how it works. And then you say, okay, well, you could say then, okay, let's debug or let's decompile product code. Or you could also say, okay, let's go and look in the Sling area. Maybe it's even solved in Sling. And in many cases, some really tricky parts are solved in Sling. And if you have access to the source code and know what you look, you can really learn a lot from just reading Sling source code, and it really improves your knowledge about the stack itself, and also you learn a lot about it, especially how people like Karsten or many people here in the first 2 rows solved quite a number of tricky issues.
So we basically think you should take your laptop to bed, and instead of reading an interesting novel, I'm kidding. It's much more simple. So when you encounter a problem where you think that goes down into the stack of the open source products, just get the source code, get debugging, read the code that's specific to the area that you're interested in that moment, because in that moment you're motivated about understanding that bit of code. So it's a good opportunity to dig into it, learn a bit about it, play around with it a little bit. Debugging is also a good way to understand how it works, and sometimes you find a bug, and then you can progress to the next level, write a test case, write a patch, create a Jira issue, and you're already contributing. Another good way to read source code is you subscribe to it. All the Apache projects have their commit diffs on the mailing list. So if you subscribe to that, you can read along while the source code changes come in, and you basically have your daily newsletter of high quality source code.
Yeah, and even if you can keep up with the constant feed of diffs sent to you from Apache, you could subscribe to the public mailing lists, either to the user mailing list or to the developer mailing list. And I think just reading there gives you a good impression what's happening in the community. And things you learned today about Oak, a few things, and the discussions date back a few months. So when you started at that time, you will probably already have known, okay, there will be something in that area is going on. Maybe there will be a new AEM feature coming. You never know. And just reading this mailing list and participating in the discussions, I think gives you a really good insight, and also gives you impression how the people discuss and what they have in mind when they reject a certain way how something is implemented.
So yeah, get started today. Go onto the respective websites. We have a second slide which we're not going to show you. We hope it's going to go up on the conference website later on. So there's just links on that side. Go to the Jackrabbit or Sling websites where the mailing list details are. Subscribe today. You can always unsubscribe. It's easy. You just send an email to the list and you're unsubscribed. It's really no big deal. And you can then fine-tune it towards, like with filtering, towards your interests, and kind of get it to a level where you're comfortable with, like reading that amount of emails on a regular basis, or not reading them for that matter. Nothing's lost, but it can be interesting, and it's the first step is to just read along what's happening on the mailing list. Maybe at some point you've got a question, so you can ask that. It's also a form of contribution. And then later on, maybe you think, oh yeah, I know what that's about, and you help someone else out. And so you can build it up in tiny little steps. I think we're already a minute over, huh?
Yeah, we are.
Shall we stop?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome you again on this adaptTo Lighting Talks. As I typically say, I'm working as a demo developer at Adobe. Typically, I am presenting some AEM demos. Like, for example, we are working right now on the VR demo to do some endpoint for the AEM, for the VR goggles and things like that. But this time, I have something different than typical. So I would like to talk about something more related to Sling, and this is called the Sling AEM assignment. I am working at Adobe at the students program, and I have this difficulty of finding the students that can do internship at our organization. I'm hiring both students in Poland or in India, and it is not very easy to find the good candidates. So I created some requirements, like for example, a Java experience, which is this is not very difficult to find. There are a lot of guys with the Android Java experience, but this typically is fine. The server and enterprise Java is not very experienced, in my opinion. JavaScript, HTML is fine. Sling experience will be very nice, but I never found anyone who with the Sling experience. I decided to create some assignment that I am just giving to the candidates to test their, for example, the motivation, learning capabilities, ability to solve the problems, and to learn new technologies like Git, Maven, Sling, HTML. Because of the licensing and other things, it is not easy to pass for anyone the AEM instance without specific requirements, but I decided that it's very easy to recreate on Sling some very typical AEM scenarios. So the scenario that is in my assignment is the typical scenario for the library. This is something that is in the programmer's assignments for the many years, and of course they are stored inside the Sling. And typically, in this assignment, I'm not giving some strict requirements about the technology, about the API. I'm just saying, do this in any way that you would like to do this, and don't ask the questions. You have 1 week, and give me in 1 week something that will work. And then the student has to decide by himself if he prefers to use the JCR nodes, or maybe he will use the Sling resources, or create Sling models, if he will search the library by traversing, or he will use JCR query of XPath. Each of these things are the different learning curve and different time that's required to learn. The nice things after donation of the HTML to Sling is that also it is possible to create some HTML templates and HTML models inside the Sling, and then this can be easily merged with the Sling models. So it is possible to create something exactly like in the AEM. And the one thing that additionally is available, there is something creating the Sling scheduler for some project job. So the story is that if the book is reserved, then if it is not confirmed in 5 minutes, the reservation is being canceled. And this is using the Sling scheduler. There is some source code skeleton that is used, so there's some hints about the syntax about scheduler service and things like that, but the candidate has to fill this example with his own code. And this is very interesting to find out how the people are trying. The worst things I found, they were doing some hard coding the book titles, and this was the nightmare. I don't know how the student wanted to do the production systems like that if he hard-coded just all the paths, but it's also possible to do the traversing, for example, traverse all the books and then check the dates on the after retrieving the nodes. But for example, the best way is to do some JCR query that includes the criteria, that includes the date time, which is some issues with the formatting the XML date time, but it is possible. And what is my result of playing this test after a group of higher group of 5 interns, because there's about 20 interns that takes these tests. So they're typically ready to take their first AEM backend development just after being hired, because they already spent this 1 week on training on the Sling things. They are ready to start the front-end development after 2 weeks because they have to learn the APIs about the components and the APIs that are typical for the AEM. And typically, they are ready to start the independent project for the 2 months. And I think that this is pretty good way to find out if someone is motivated to learn the new and cool technology like Sling. So thank you very much for your time. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to address.
Thank you.
Do I need to switch anything? Yeah, you can hear me. All right, so we do have like 10 minutes, and I'd like to elaborate a little bit more about service discovery that we discussed yesterday. Our AEM projects that we work on gets more and more complex, and we typically start with something simple, and it grows and grows and grows, and there's a lot of boxes that you need to manage, and you have to somehow interconnect these boxes together. So there's dozens of IP addresses, and it gets really messy. So you have to find a way to manage that complexity. This is the actual diagram of a production environment, and please don't rub your eyes. It's been blurred on purpose. So as you can see, there's a lot of boxes, and there's a lot of connections between them, and you have a couple of those. So this is just a production. You have like pre-prod, staging, development, whatever your naming convention is. So you can hard-code those IP addresses in your various places, but that's not the way to go, as it will become unmanageable at all. So we started research, and we started to looking for something that can actually address that. And as you already know, we decided on console. There are like 2 types of products that you can use to implement service discovery. The first thing is based on configuration management tools like Chef, Puppet, or Ansible, or a more dedicated tool like Consul, Zookeeper, or etcd. So Consul, for us, solves 4 basic problems. And we actually use just 3 of those features. So the first is service discovery. That's kind of obvious. The second thing is load balancing, health checks, and key value configuration. We don't use that key value configuration really, but that's for the sake of completeness. I decided to put that here as well. So Consul is written in Golang. It's a single binary, nothing fancy. It has a single configuration file, so it's super easy to deploy. It's aware of data centers or like zones, so you can use that to separate your infrastructure logically. So you have like a EU region or US region, and you can use Consul to reflect that in your configuration. The architecture under the hood is based on agents. You have 2 types of agents. You have client or a server. And for consistency reasons, you have to have an odd number of servers, so like 1, 3, 5, 7, whatever. And it communicates over GOSI protocol, so you don't have to have a full mesh between all the nodes. As long as there's a path from one end to the other, that's just fine. There is a nice UI, but that's not really important. There's also a CLI interface. But yeah, before that service discovery part becomes useful, you have to actually register something in that service discovery tool. So to register something, you have to generate a JSON file, which looks like this. It's not super complicated. You have to render that, put it in an appropriate directory to make things work. And when you add a bunch of services, the next thing is you have to start discover things. And the really important or crucial part here is that you're looking for services, not IP addresses. As you want to talk to publish, you want to talk to like Solr, you want to talk to some external API, not to a given IP address. There's a rich HTTP API, but that's not really useful for us. Here's a couple of examples. The more interesting part of Consul is its DNS API, which here's a pattern of a domain name that you can use to start searching for various services. It may look quite complicated, but in fact, it's really simple. Here's a more simplified version. So here's how it looks. You just send a DNS query like, give me all AM instances, or give me first AM publish instance, or give me all publish instances in like EU West 1B zone. And you get a bunch of IP addresses as a response. So how it works with AM. So typical scenario is you need to locate your published instances. So you have to create a bunch of replication agents to replicate content from authoring to your published zone. The truth is your number of published instances is typically constant, and the same goes for your data centers. Like if you have like 2 or 3, it doesn't change every day. It's more like a more complicated operation to introduce anything extra. So you can use a very simple algorithm to allocate your published instances into zones. And we use Chef for management of replication agents. So here's a loop in Ruby. Here's a bunch of variables. And here's a probably familiar from my yesterday talk, CQ-JCR resource. We define a bunch of properties. So I want to create a resource on one of my published instances. And I just need to put a bunch of properties to make that node an agent. And here's the final effect. Some of you may notice, and I intentionally skip that Consul doesn't listen on a port 53, which is the default DNS port, so it's not completely transparent. And etc resolve conf file, which is a file you configure your DNS servers, doesn't accept ports. There are just IP addresses there. So to overcome that problem, we started to use a thing called DNS mask, which is like DNS proxy. So it actually is sort of a DNS router for us. So whenever there's a domain, there's a request for Consul domain, we use DNS masks to actually ask a different DNS server, which is console. And if it's not a console domain, then we use regular DNS server. So here's like a pseudocode that actually describes what I've just said. All right, so DNS mask will be typically your primary DNS server, and here's a file that actually presents such setup. Second common use case is you have to connect your publish instance with your dispatcher so you can flush the content. So to do that, you need to typically configure a one-to-one relation, like your first publish talk to first dispatcher. And to do that, you can also use chef and console. So here's what I've just said. And there's an easy way to have this exactly the same configuration on every single publish and return different IP addresses depending on what publish you are. So if you're on the first publish, you should get the IP or the address of the first dispatcher, and the same thing goes for second publish and the second dispatcher. So to do that, we actually pull out some data out of console, and we use that data to generate a bunch of additional domains directly in DNS mask. So we generate basically such file, and because of that, we can get different IP addresses depending on what server you are. So if you're on the first publish, you get .122, and if you're on the second publish, you get 141. And here's the final effect. So we came across a slightly odd case. As it turned out, there's a hidden feature in dispatcher. So typically, the resolution of a domain that you put here happens just once during your dispatcher start. And that wasn't actually really useful for us, as those domains may return different IP addresses because of console. And it turned out there's a hidden feature in dispatcher. You have to add always resolve 1 to resolve that domain on every request. Console also supports health checks. So that's really useful when you have a bunch of servers and, for example, your DNS query returns like 10 different servers, and if any one of them goes down, you don't want to keep that IP address in the result set. It should be automatically deleted so there's no traffic coming to that server. And there's a feature in console that you can use called health checks. You can define either a simple port check or a more complicated script check that can be anything, like a bash script or more like even a C program, whatever you want. We also use console for DNS load balancing. So, for example, if you have like 2 zones or 2 data centers, and if your like primary search engine goes down, the whole traffic should be routed to a second data center, and console can do that for us. So there's a concept of prepared queries. I don't want to go into details if you don't have that much time. We have like 30 seconds. There's also a feature that's all about locking. So you can use console as a distributed lock, and that's useful for development, actually for deployments. So for example, if you'd like to deploy an application on top of environment with like 4 publishers, you want to keep at least one of them running all the time to keep the application available. So you can do that with those distributed locks. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob.
OK. Yes, I heard multiple times during this conference, can I use this or that tool to provision my local IAM instance? And so I thought I could give an answer to this with a short talk. How do we provision our local IAM instance with CONGA, for example? What is the motivation? Of course, every AMM developer, front-end or back-end, needs a local IAM instance. And this IAM instance should really have exactly the same and most times project-specific configuration, service packs, hotfixes, whatever sample content deployed. So you can really reduce bugs, implement features on the same foundation for the whole team. Yeah, how can you do it? You could, of course, use Vagrant, which is cool. or you can use Docker on your local machine, which is even cooler. But what about just using Maven? This is really cool. In case you don't know, I love Maven. Yeah, so just showing a demo how we are doing this. Just switching to screen duplication. Okay, so I have an empty AIM instance. There's nothing in here. It's just a fresh installed AIM 6.3 instance. And I have a script. And I have a publish instance as well, which is empty as well. I will just starting the script, deploy to author and publish. It's now built just my little sample application, which is very simple AIM application with a template and 2 components, and builds this. And additionally, it builds also the CONGA artifacts. I will just show you what they are. They are mainly AIM packages, which are partially generated by the project, application, sample content, and partially dynamically generated, and partially third-party packages, like the core VCM components, WCM components, or ACS Commons, for example, if you need it. And okay, now the build is complete, and now it starts deploying the packages to the author instance. This was the core WCMA components. Now it's ACM Commons a version, and then are following some configuration packages which are dynamically generated, and finally the application package and some sample content. And of course, all this in the correct order, and now it's starting with the publish instance, doing just the same, and I can start, open the AIM instance, and have my little sample application with sample content deployed. This is not very astonishing, but I will show you how this is tied together to really control the package order and what is deployed and how to put all the configuration. I'm opening this first time on this instance, so it needs some compiling for the touch UI JS piece still underneath. And if this is done, it will show the page editor. Okay, this is still on the publish instance, working. It's also setting up the replication agents between auth and publish. If you need a local publish instance, you don't always need it. And the compilation is ready. Publish is deployed as well. Yes, so of my application, hello Konrad. And on publish, it's as well. And yeah, so what have we behind the scenes? We have a very simple script which really just consists of 2 lines plus a bit, okay, parameterization, output, and error handling, but basically just a clean install. So it's simple. And then it's a call just setting the Sling URL and credentials. I'm communicating with an author or publish, and then calling a special Maven plugin CONGA AIM package, which just installs all packages which were managed by CONGA. And how is this done? We have a CONGA role, which is project specific, which inherits from a default generic CMS role, which implements some default behavior like configuring an application agent, enabling DAVX for CXD Lite for your local instance, etc. And then I have referenced some third-party packages like core components, ACS Commons. I have generating a bunch of OSGI configurations. I'm generating a special config, for example, for configuring the AMP translator, which by some strange design is not configured via OSGI, but via content node. And my application packages in some default values which get applied if I do not specify specific values. Then I have a special environment only describing my local machine, where I have one author, one publish, replication agents, and I say, okay, I want sample content, I want developer mode, I'm just setting up ACS error handler and publish route mapping for my sample content, and for demonstration some translator languages. And with this, just having short look at how the OSGI configuration is generated. It's a Sling provisioning file, but at the same time it's a template, because you see here handlebars, variable references, or here it's a loop about all error handler paths, or here it's an if condition. This is only present when the developer mode is enabled, or here you're setting this route mapping, etc. Different configuration for author and publish. So we are just using the provisioning format to have a dynamic configuration depending on different environments, different targets, different parameters, which is set. Yes, and with this, if it's generated, we have in the target folder, we have 2 nodes, author, publish. Both have a slightly different list of packages. They are just the packages which are third-party, like comments and the core components, application packages, but also the dynamically generated packages. For example, this here, just containing, no, this is system 1, it's here, just containing the set of config files for the different configuration of error handler, log manager, route mapping, etc., generated on the fly based on this template. And additionally, there is a model file, a model YAML, which just describes all files that are generated in the correct order. By the way, this is the same file which is picked up by the Ansible integration we have seen on Monday in Martin's talk. And this simple Maven plugin, AM packages, Maven plugin for CONGA is doing the same. It just picks up this model file, sees, okay, there are 10 packages, picks it in the right order, and just deploys it locally. Yeah, and with this, you have the instance up and running. You have the generated configuration artifacts and control their installation order, including third-party packages and your own packages. You have this Maven plugin to deploy this whole list, and a simple shell script just as glue code. And this is very simple. What you not have is a dispatcher or third-party services like Solar, but for a lot of, or most AM projects, you do not need them, you just need an instance. You can also deploy, just have a quick look in the role, things like hotfixes and service packs. For example, here the cumulative fix pack, I commented it out because installing this and also publish would take longer than the whole talk. It would be really nice if Adobe would publish a new quick start with every service pack or cumulative fix pack, because it would really speed up automated deployments, including those. Hint. So yes, so I've commented this out, but it's technical. It's really a problem without problem. And this Maven plugin use is something like a stepsister of the WCMO content package plugin, using the same technology in turn. This robust deployment, you even can start deploying when the A instance is not running at all, or it's just starting up. It then waits and pings the instance until it is ready, and then. Yeah, then you have a very robust deployment with all special packages which perhaps need more time to restart bundles on your local AM instance. And every developer, front and back end, is happy to use it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Stefan.